You are now listening to Femme Regard Podcast with Tessa Markle
and Carolina Alvarez.
Femme. Hello, listeners. Me and Carolina coming at you with some facts and opinions and stuff we've learned
Some
and
Italian
phrases.
and
You never know.
You never know on the show.
No, you really don't. We should bring back the card games, I think.
Oh my God.
Just me and you, though.
I think we should do that or some reinvention of it.
Yeah, we'll just
do you
have
guys
an episode
miss
where we
it?
just
Like,
play.
let us know. I'm always like, whenever I share the podcast with like a new listener, I'm like, oh my God, if they go back to season 1 and they hear the card game, what are the thoughts?
Yeah,
it was a wild little ride that we were on that season 1, and we put that game to rest. And let us know, guys. Do you want that game back? Like, you want to hear me and Tessa go at it with the accents?
Yeah, but I mean,
if you have no idea what we're talking about, yeah, take a peek back at season 1.
Go listen to our first couple. But I mean, like, we just want your opinion in general. We've gotten a lot of great feedback about our show, but not a lot of like, what do you guys want to hear?
Yeah.
And what should we do differently? So like, I mean, be brutally honest. We can take it. We're actors. We're used to rejection. But seriously, we want to hear what you guys want to hear, what you want us to do differently, all that jazz. So please leave us some comments, send us some messages.
Yes.
All that jazz.
All that jazz. So today, Tessa's gonna like probe my brain for the topic of writing.
Yes. Because we have written all of our own projects. We thought for a while about looking for a script to produce, read some scripts, decided none of them were really for us, and maybe we should just stick to writing our own stuff for now. And we have talked a lot about our femme noir that we have been working on, that Karolina's been writing. And yeah, I mean, Karolina has really been heading the writing of all of our stuff for us as a duo. I kind of just come in and help her, fix things here and there and change things and whatever.
She's great to listen to my rambling too, like on my backboard and telling me, just letting me go.
That's what I do best. But so I want to talk a little bit about the writing process. And, like, obviously we're not professionals. We've just been doing this for a little while. So I want Karolina to tell you guys what has worked for her, what hasn't worked for her, how she gets started and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be great to share kind of my journey through this. So I guess for the start of the femme noir, figuring out like what the femme noir world was. And honestly, for me, it wasn't finding any structure. It was just kind of my process is just seeing like kind of some characters in my head or scene, and like I get inspired by film and music. That's kind of a lot how my brain kind of works. I'm very visual. So I'll see something and then I will just start to write, and I pretty much like do a throw up on a page. And
we call it stream of consciousness.
I love that. My stream of consciousness
or my word vomit, either way.
Yeah, for word vomit. And so I'll start from like that kind of messy place. And then, given everything that inspires me, I'll just keep writing for a bit. And then with this, I realized that you can only do that to a certain point. Some people, again, everyone has their own process. Some people can just like, continue to write and not have figured out the arcs and like all the different little moments and plot points.
Like if anyone reads Charles Bukowski, that is exactly how he writes. Granted, that's a novel as opposed to a screenplay, but like, yeah.
And one will say that it takes just as long and more time to do a screenplay than a novel because there's less words. So you have to really like build all of that in your, your screenwriting. And so it's good to know both because you're kind of writing in a sense of place of both. And I just... I was like, okay, now I don't know where I'm going with this. So yeah, it did me good to kind of just word vomit and start because I started to get an idea for the world and the characters. And that was my one note with my first draft. Like I
Hmm.
think my positive note was from everyone who read it, thank you, was, I really get an idea of the world like you're
Yeah.
going for. Like it's very clear. And so that was awesome because you want to know your genre.
Yeah.
You want to know like kind of the like where it's set because that affects your protagonist.
Hmm.
And I real quick, I want to share like, a successful story should have the following three: authentic characters, a complex story arc, and believable dialogue. So that's something, to keep in the forefront as you go on the journey.
Hmm.
Um,
I will say the one nice thing about a screenplay versus, like a novel, for instance, is the believable dialogue thing. Like, if you're granting your actors a little bit of freedom too, they can always fuck with that and make it better. Like I know
uh-huh.
as an actor, I'll get side sometimes that I'm like, why did they write it like that? Nobody talks like that. You know
All
what
the
I mean?
time.
And it's like the content is there. It's great. So I'll just improvise and I'm like, I hope they're okay with that, but I know that sounds way more human. So, that's one kind of like benefit of a screenplay is, you still have to be writing believable dialogue, yes, but you kind of just have that freedom with your actors to make it their own.
Absolutely, and give them that guideline because with my noir, I that was like the biggest challenge was I started from a really film noir classic, like very wordy,
Hmm.
like ranting almost.
She came into my office that morning.
Like
The woman in black.
the woman in black, and at the staircase, I saw her, that dame. Okay, so like yeah, there was a lot of words
Hmm.
and I had to like cut out like 90% of them. I
Hmm.
think I wouldn't you say like
Oh
my
yeah.
my like my dialogue went from really long to then concise because it's a modern noir. It's not
Hmm.
set back then and no one talks like that. But I still wanted that edge. So I had to find that dance of like
Yeah.
that kind of jivey jabbing talk that the knife fight with the words but it's not really long like
Hmm.
paragraphs and monologues that no one speaks in when you are
Yeah.
talking to somebody.
Yeah.
So that was something that was a challenge and I had to keep in the forefront.
I think you did a good job of that with by creating your characters, because they're people that they've got that feel of that old school, those characters that are in those noirs,
Okay.
but they're still believable in modern day. So it's not like you're putting this awkward dialogue onto these characters that wouldn't talk like that. Like they would talk like that. You're just cutting out the extra fluff that we don't need for a modern thing,
But the essence is still there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Tessa. Another, so I had to really go back though, and my one friend who was also working on a feature, he's like, "Gotta do that line, Carolina. Gotta do that line." I'm like, "Okay," and he's right. You gotta like, I mean, those writers who will just write without an outline, they've spent years probably doing scripts with outlines that it's just ingrained. Like
Mhm.
they know the beats and what does an outline look like. Everyone has their own like the three acts. I like was looking at a bunch of different ones, but I think what at least I'm not going to give a whole lecture on that, but what made me help figure out my story more definitively was figuring out what happens in the end, the
Yeah.
climax, and that is that inciting incident. That is where your protagonist um makes a change in action that they just can't come back from. I was struggling with that for a long time, as Tessa knows.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, I don't want to ruin the noir, but it's like, who killed it? So
Who
it's
done it?
who
Changed
done
many,
it?
many
Oh,
times.
many, many, many times because it like I'm figuring out with my protagonist their journey because you want to know for your main protagonist if they're usually going on a physical emotional journey. That journey is going to psychologically have an arc and that's something you want to think about, and it's all the major characters surrounding that protagonist, they have to link to that journey. So it was like a big deal about who done it because it's going to really give the journey for that main character, and it was like, is this authentic to that character? And like I kept getting wrap up on all of those wonderful things that you got to think about. But also then what helped me then think about the psychological aspect of my character was figuring out the controlling idea, which I really love the way Robert McGee puts it in his book Story, which I highly recommend and helped me guide me through the outlining process. Um, and he explains it that it shouldn't be longer than a one sentence statement. So there you go. It must describe the climatic value charge of the entire story either positively or negatively, and then must be specific as possible about the change in value of the change. So I know that's like a lot to break down. He breaks it down, then goes into it more in depthly. But I'll share my statement with you to as an example.
Mhm.
So this is what kind of created, think of it as the spine of your story, the controlling idea. And this is like kind of more of like almost the psychological spine for my
Mhm.
characters, for like the protagonist, but then all the surrounding characters. And that is manipulation occurs when we have a false indication of who we are, but upon self-discovery, we are able to defy all outside forces. So that kind of gives me an arc with my character, but also sets some themes and tones and the positive and negative charge as well
Yeah.
in the storytelling. And so that's why it kept me thinking about that climax moment.
Mhm.
Like, what is that negative positive charge gonna show? And are they defying the outside forces? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, once I decided those elements, I was able to freaking write the rest of
Mhm.
the thing, which is still in development, but we got our proof of concept pretty nailed down tight
Yeah.
now. So because I have the bare bones of the outline done now, and it's going to be a process. Like there's beat changes that I'm breaking down. Like you can really get it, everyone has a different way of doing it. I don't know if I'm going to get super detailed
Mhm.
with it, like have it beat by beat, but it does, I mean, for examining your writing to like,
I mean, I think it depends what kind of like creative you are. Like I'm a very analytical person. So I like to break things down like scientifically. You know what I mean? So I think me personally, writing out loud, I probably would put all those beats, like organize all of that. But not
depends.
everybody
Yeah.
thinks like that?
It does help check yourself, like no positive, negative change from plot, from the beginning of these two characters to the end of the scene. If there was
Hmm.
no change, then bye. Robert McGee puts it perfectly. He says something like, if the scene is about what the scene is about, then it's shit. Like then you're in deep shit.
Yeah.
So I always keep that in the back of my mind.
Well, it's always what's underneath, whether you're talking about dialogue or the story as a whole, like that's what always makes it more interesting because otherwise it's just a slice of life. It's just not even a slice of life. It's like a documentary, which documentaries are totally interesting in their own way, but like
But it's a
documentaries are about what
documentary.
it's about.
Right, exactly.
Versus like something dramatic. Yeah, it's got to be about all the energy that's underneath of it all. Like, what are these characters really thinking, even though they're saying this?
He
And
gives a perfect example. I listened to this audiobook a couple times now. Like, you see a couple at the beginning of the scene. They're having a lovely dinner. They're sitting down. The husband goes, "Oh, honey, I love you so much." And she
Mhm.
turns to him. She's like, "Oh, honey, I love you too." And they can begin to eat, and the dialogue's full of compliments, and that's the end of scene. What? It's
Mhm.
like there's no tension, there's no drive. That is just what the everyday, like,
Mhm.
there's normally, when you're writing something you want, like maybe, that he just had an affair and there's
Yeah.
like that underlining like tension. You got to be having that.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just kind of like no one wants to watch two couples who are in love
Mhm.
just
Well, it's the thing is
doing
like,
it.
yeah, we want things to be realistic, but like we go to the movies to see stuff that it's beyond what we're just experiencing in our everyday
Exactly.
lives. Like we want to be entertained. We are like humans are drawn to drama. No matter how much people say they don't want drama in their lives, it's interesting to see drama. That's why we go to the movies.
Exactly. I know I've shared on the show a couple of these writers and these resources before, but I'm gonna go ahead and like reiterate them
Absolutely.
to you. And so, like I said, Story by Robert McGee was amazing for outlining. Um, Save the Cat by Blake Snyder was also super, super helpful. It's all about screenwriting. He breaks down the genres beautifully, kind of helps you figure out your log line, which also was super important to me redefining my process. You really like, I feel like that was actually, I think, my first step too, to be honest, was like the log line. And then I like did the world and stuff because without that, it kind of, you don't like, what is your story about? So that's super important. And he goes on to then, I think, even how to really pitch and sell your script. And then I just really love Stephen King. So on writing his book, it's not geared towards screenwriting, but I think just in general, the dedication of like, he was super dedicated, writes every day. And I think I always find that really important, try to work on your craft. Like it's a job and that's something you care about. And then he's just brilliant. So
and he's been on both sides. He's written novels and screenplays. So
exactly. So I think super important to kind of help build your worlds and characters. And he's just brilliant. And then my favorite like kind of blog post articles are by writer Scott Myers. It's called Go Into the Story. And I think you can follow him on Instagram and pull up his like website that has Go Into the Story posts, but I found him through Medium, and I've spoken to you guys about it on the show too. There's it's a platform where writers can post their content and share, there's different topics and genres that you can like kind of cater towards. And so I actually follow, I think, a couple different writer blog posts, but Scott Myers is kind of my favorite because he really goes into screenwriting and gives really great breakdowns. And so I highly recommend that everyone kind of tunes into these peeps. They've helped me. And
Save the Cat is like the classic screenwriting book. Like everybody talks about that book. Like you can't exist in Hollywood as a writer without having read that book. Like that is required reading.
Exactly. So
but
yours today.
Exactly. Order it on Amazon, put it on your Kindle, all that stuff. But I hope that helped you guys. If you're thinking about getting started writing, if you are already writing and you're stuck, whatever. And I hope like you guys actually go out and read some of these books if you are thinking about writing.
They were tremendously helpful. Like kind of, if I could just share my process a little bit, was like your brain, your like conscience is always working when whether you think it is or isn't. So like I would like kind of put it like I'd be working something at night, get writer's block, then go to bed. And then in the morning, you have your morning shower and I'm still thinking about it. But then I'll put on like a podcast or read an article in the morning from one of these guys. And it was like, it helped just like kind of bring my thoughts together. I was doing the work in the morning and then it just like solidified those thoughts. So just like always be reading things, researching what works for other people, because you'd be surprised. Like it helped me gather my thoughts at least.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening. Hopefully we'll have more news on our Femme Noir that we've been writing next time. We'll see. We can't wait for you guys to actually get to watch it, read the screenplay, whatever happens. We're excited for you guys to see that world.
We're so excited.
But we will see you all next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Femme Regard Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in next time for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals over tea.
We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. If you leave us a great comment, we might give you a shout out on the show.
For more on us, check us out at femregard.com.